This video is going to have to be a bit more serious with less jokes, no gags, and no witty intro. If you harass the people I talk about in this video, or anyone for that matter, you are in the truest sense part of the problem. You either need to stop that behavior or get out of the gaming community if we are ever to be taken seriously. Roll the intro. This is a video idea I've been sitting on for a while, but it's one of those that's difficult to do because essentially I'm calling this community and myself out. It's a hobby I've enjoyed since I was 5 years old and have been an active community member of when I was in high school and on the BioWare forums. With that time, I've noticed that this industry is incredibly toxic. I know that was so obvious I can hear the sarcastic gasps as I'm saying this. In the past, however, I've excused this as we were justified because of this reason, or it's just a vocal minority, just ignore them. I didn't make a video calling out this behavior because it would be hypocritical of me, or it was such a sensitive topic I would run the risk of not giving the topic the respect it deserved. What makes this video hard is that I've either been unhelpful or at moments complicit with this behavior. I've never gone to the extremes I'm going to talk about in a minute, but I want those watching to know that I don't intend this to be a virtue signal, but more of me trying to course correct my own behavior and hopefully do the same for others. What finally got me to write this script and record was The Last of Us 2 and a clip of a certain streamer I'll talk about later. I haven't played The Last of Us 2, and I have no opinion on it. What I do have an opinion on is people sending death threats to Laura Bailey, the voice actress for Abby. This isn't even the first time a video game developer, voice actor, or games journalist has been given death threats. What baffles my mind is that as a community, we are insulted and offended when mainstream media labels us as oversensitive man babies, and then almost on cue, we then have people in this community go and act like overly sensitive man babies and send death threats to a voice actor who wasn't a writer, who wasn't a director, or a producer. Even if they were, death threats are not okay. What's even worse is the moment I heard Laura's voice and I knew this was going to happen. What does that say about our community? We as a society shouldn't have to clarify that harassment and death threats are bad, but we, the gamers, seem to have elements in our group that think it's okay. It's well within your right to criticize the game. As the editorial guy on this channel, I have made it my niche in this group by criticizing the industry like a store brand Jim Sterling. However, death threats? Harassing and doxing people? That kind of behavior is morally detestable, and if you don't like a character, leave a 1-star review on Metacritic with all the other petulant children. We as a community need to learn to handle things we don't like with more grace and civility. If we don't, we will forever have the label of the angry entitled gamer, and the real change we want will be ignored.
So while editing this video, I came up with a few thoughts of my own, so I'd like to add my 2 cents into this conversation with some observations that I've personally made. This isn't a new issue. This problem has been going on for years. A perfect example would be Jake Lloyd, the child actor who portrayed Anakin Skywalker in the first Star Wars prequel, The Phantom Menace. People were up in arms for their hatred of the first of the prequels, that shortly after the release of the movie, Jake was harassed by bullies at school and also by the press who weren't above making a child look bad for a story. This problem is inherent in today's media because the self-respect that's expected of us as adults just doesn't exist when it makes for a good story. This harassment put an end to Jake's career before it even took off and caused him to hate Star Wars for years afterwards. Even Mark Hamill, the actor from the original trilogy, which is universally praised by the fan base, came out against the treatment for Jake Lloyd, which I will show the clip of right now.
I'm still angry about the way they treated Jake Lloyd. He was only 10 years old, that boy, and he did exactly what George wanted him to do. Believe me, I understand clunky dialogue. I almost got hornswoggled in that documentary where they weren't calling it The People versus George Lucas at the time, but I could tell from the questions they were asking me, it was an open invitation to trash George. And I have issues with George, but I love that man. I would never, and I don't talk outside the family. It's just brutal. One of the reasons I would never let my kids be in show business. Wait till you're 18, because it's going to be an endless life of rejection, ridicule, and unemployment.
My thoughts are aligned with Taylor's in that we as a community need to separate the actor from the character. Sure, we occasionally have some voice actors who post some horrible things on social media, but if you hate the character, not the person who plays them, because 9 times out of 10, the actor probably plays someone you really like in another role. I mean, just look at Jim Cummings. Jim Cummings has hundreds of roles. There's bound to be ones that you hate and ones that you really like. Back to you, Taylor.
Let's talk about the streamer I mentioned before. That streamer is Alinity. I have a lot to say about the things Alinity has done. I have even more to say when it comes to how Twitch has handled those issues. That's a point for another day, probably on a podcast if Vergil can remind me. For context, here's a clip.
You guys need to know that the shit you guys do and the shit you guys say really affects people. Okay? Like, you guys have no idea how many times I've wanted to kill myself. How many times I've spent my entire night trying to figure out how I was gonna end my life.
You are free to criticize Alinity for her actions. But as with Laura Bailey, you cross a line when you start harassing someone. Again, I'm going to repeat this so there is no confusion. I don't like what Alinity has done. But to harass someone to the point where they think about quitting their job or threatening self-harm, we have gone too far. We, as mature consumers of this industry, should know to say our piece and leave it be. But there are those that don't, and they ruin our image. An image we need when we need to tell governments loot boxes are gambling. They ruin an image we need when we want to pressure companies to change their monetization schemes. Most of us don't care what the media will call us, but we need to care if we want to make this industry and this community a better place. The big lesson to this is we need to do better, and we aren't. I am not excluded from that. We need to use more positive means for change in this industry. Instead of sending death threats to a voice actor of a game you don't like, don't buy it, or write a review. If you don't like what a streamer did, go ahead and voice why you don't like it on Twitter. But let it go once you're done, and let that person grow and learn from their mistakes. Don't harass them and dogpile them. We are living in some of the roughest times right now. It doesn't need any help from us. Instead of scorning someone, teach them. Instead of hating something, raise something you like up. That's all I got.
Because at the end of the day, when we separate you from your toxic environment, y'all are good people. And so we've got a chance. Like, sure, it's the final boss, but like, we've got what it takes. Because at the end of the day, I've been looking for god-awfulness within this community from day one. We've asked like incels and a dude with a waifu to come on, and if there isn't some degenerate shit on the internet, isn't it that kind of stuff? And these people shockingly turn out to be decent and normal human beings, because we all are. And as long as you just peel a couple of the layers of the onion back, you're gonna find decency underneath.